In other words, it's 15 minutes to the mile when you're walking. Then over time, and this is going to take years, it's not going to take 2 seconds, it's not going to do that in microseconds.
Instant gratification.
It's not Burger King, as we say. They have to do this on a continuous basis. Once they get down to a good, healthy weight, then you can pare down that activity to 30 minutes a day. But the activity, I'm sorry guys, it's part of your everyday behavior. And I don't believe in weird diets. I do believe in you can eat, basically what I've gotten to the point is, don't go in strange diets. Eat what you eat all the time, but decrease the amounts. We are victims, this country is, we're victims of such a good economy for such a long time. In Europe, people don't have the money to pay for the gas, so they have to walk, they have to ride the bike, and that's the same way with the rest of the country. We get in our cars to move from one block, to move from one place to the other because we don't want to walk. And that's our major problem. So it's exercise, eating with your head, big breakfast, smaller lunch, smaller supper. And it's a simple common sense thing to approach
it. It really is. I mean, it's amazing to sit there and talk to a person who's spent half of his life, 50, 60 years old approximately, and you're talking to them like they're school children sometimes about
simple
and
things.
Sometimes it is amazing to see that they're surprised when you tell them, oh, I shouldn't do that, I should eat a salad, or I should eat some fruits, or I should cut my portions down, or try not to eat the burgers, or try not to eat the big steaks or pork every day. Cut down your portions. It's amazing, and I think it, unfortunately, probably it is also somewhat, it works both ways, I think, to some extent, with the level of literacy. It's inversely proportional to what you do, and if the less literate you are, sometimes we tend to be, our dietary habits sometimes are restricted, and other times it is lack of that education. But like Mike said, in the olden days, people had that sense. They didn't have all these fast food joints. So they had fields and they had gardens where they could pick and do simple things.
Fresh food, and they worked physical labor, which substituted for the exercise.
Right. I mean, here we all lead hectic lives. But Clay, how do you approach this diet problem? How do you advise your patients to choose a dietary thing? And what kind of resources do we have when we want to lead on? It's easy to say, well, it is easy to say if they're easy to, but sometimes who are the specialists that are available to us? Of course, we can tell them a little bit, but do you use dietitians or who do you use?
Well, I'll start and then I'll defer to Mike, because actually before we went on the air, we were kind of discussing that as to, it is a very difficult thing to get patients to eat right. And the other thing, I'm going to back up just real quick and say, we keep talking about obesity and overweight, but there's still 70% of the country is considered unhealthy, and that includes a great deal of people who are not overweight. So it's just like Mike said, you may be gifted with good genes, but that doesn't spare you. That just spares that may spare you from being overweight, but it still doesn't decrease your risk of cardiovascular disease if you continue to smoke, if you continue to eat the fast foods and not take care of yourself. So we're not here to bash just obesity and overweight, because it's a general health problem that we're trying to manifest to correct here. But specifically, what do we do to get people to eat right? They come in, they've come to the office, it's a 50-50. Some of them have already been diagnosed with coronary artery disease or some type of vascular disease where they've already developed some blockage from years of bad habits. And then some come in and said, my dad had a heart attack at 50, I'm 30, and I don't want to follow in those footsteps. I want to do something about it now. And so we start trying to talk about, well, what are you doing now to get you where you want to be? And the difficult part of that is resources. We sit in there, we don't have 30 minutes to sit and counsel somebody on exactly what to do, and nor could I do it correctly. That's not my profession, is nutrition. But what I generally tell people, like Dr. Orzola said, stay away from the fried foods, stay away from the fast foods, eat more fruits and vegetables and raw foods, and stay away from the processed foods. And that's just a general guideline. That is not by all means what you should take home here, but there are a lot of different resources. And what I generally tell people to do, there's two great resources if you're internet savvy, to go on the internet, and there's tons of information on the internet. And secondly is the bookstore. The bookstore, I go to Barnes and Nobles and I just stand there at the health and nutrition section and look and just get really overwhelmed with the amount of different books and diet plans there are. But the thing I would recommend about that is if you do get the book, follow it. Don't take one chapter out of this book, one chapter out of that book, and one here and there, because generally an author is trying to create one concept that the first chapter feeds off the last chapter. So it really tends to work better if you follow it that way. With that said, I'm going to let Mike say a few things about what's going on in OGH and what's available.
And I would, here again, not to bash anybody, I think all of us should be mindful. We are telling a lot of audience, but the fact is, if you step into the doctor's lounge or if you get down to the cafeteria, while there are choices, you're not really restricting the people. You have a whole slew of these unhealthy choices every single day on the menu. There are good choices, but it's just you're exposed to this all your life, and you have this deal. And how can you, if in a hospital is not mindful of this, how can you really talk about a general public? And Mike, tell me what your approach would be.
Well, when we got there, one of the first things that we looked at was the environment, and of course the food selection was one of the things that we really pointed out. And it's hard to go down, even on a salad bar, to look at it and see a lot of greens and a lot of, we saw a lot of different mayonnaise-based, pastas that you could throw on top of some iceberg lettuce. Those changes made. We've got a new girl, Allison, now the head of dietitian for OGH, and she's starting to make some great changes. And it's slow when you go to change a process like that. It takes a little bit of time, but we're seeing some great things happen at OGH with the food selection. And of course, Stephanie and I are just nudging them a little bit more. With our new administration now, Mr. Gelly Keller came out of our last administrative leadership team meeting and says, guys, we're going to embrace the wellness program. We're going to wrap our arms around it. We, as individual employees of a healthcare system, need to take personal responsibility in our own health. We are healthcare providers, so we need to be healthy. And
we need to be models of good health, ideally.
I'm seeing a big change, and we had a meeting today with our wellness committee, and we're looking at setting up our date where it's not mandatory, but it's going to be one of these things that it's really not going to look good if you don't come through this health screening that we're going to have in the first of the year to see and establish our baseline. The number 2 thing I had on my top 10 things, guys, and Dr. Orzola, you had mentioned on it, is know your risk factors. You really need to look and assess your where are you today? Because if you don't know where you are, where are you going to know where you're going? So when you think about it, guys, what's really important? Blood chemistry. We know that HDL and LDL has a definite correlation to heart disease. What about blood pressure? We know that's there. Resting heart rate. If we've got, like you guys now, you now have a carotid screening. I think some of the techniques now that we have for screening for cardiovascular disease are very quick and easy and non-invasive. So doing a good baseline physical should give you the number 1 thing, I think, once you found purpose, is motivation. Now, if your scores don't motivate you, if someone shows you, hey, doc, look, your blood pressure's here, man, your cholesterol's here, and we better do something, you're 50 years old, chances are you're not going to make the 77.5 average, weight. Lifespan in the last few years are not going to be fun. That should motivate you to change your lifestyle. So knowing where you are is very important. And the third thing that I talked about, and you said starting with walking. Walking is a great program, to get started with. If your joints and you're capable, you don't have, lower back problem, knee arthritis, all these things, The water, excellent place to start with the program. Studies just came out. The type of programs that I run at OGH are all called circuit weight training. I know, Doc, you've come in a couple times to see me doing this. I got a mass of people going on a cardio machine for a minute and a half, a weight machine for a minute and a half, back to cardio, back to weights. So we're getting some strength training and building the musculoskeletal system. At the same time, we're conditioning the heart and lungs and respiratory system. That's the kind of biggest bang for the buck that we're seeing now is doing some circuit type training. And I have that, I think, is number my 5th or something like that. The 4th thing, we've already touched on it, is nutrition. When you say, where do you lead these people? Well, when you go in the grocery store and you take that hard right and you see all of the fruits and the vegetables and the greens, man, 60% of your cart ought to be loaded up with that. And then you're going to go back to the dairy section, get your milk and get some of the things that you need. But try to stay away from all the processed stuff, man. Even some of the canned goods, when you look at it, how much sodium? How much sodium?
And I heard this just the other day too, and I forgot to mention that, and it's what I've been telling patients lately too. How do you, when you go to the grocery store, how do you shop? If you stay on the outside,
you'll be okay.
You're okay. Stay out of the center part of the grocery store, because you go into the right, there's always the fresh fruits, and then you go down to the dairy, or the meat across the back, and then
I couldn't agree with you more. It's just I know most of the audience might know that I'm from India, and when you come in here, it's just surprising when you walk into a grocery store, the amount of food, the amount of choices, the amount of processed foods, or chips or canned goods, which I find myself, I probably have never touched 99.9% of what is there in that store.
Yeah.
I mean, as you said, it's a very simple advice. If you stay on the perimeter for the most part, if you stay on the outside,
and think about
you'll be okay. It's a very practical advice. I've never thought about it like that, but it's beautiful advice.
Yes.
If you really stick to that, if you stick to buying those fresh products, vegetables,
fruits, vegetables,
get some dairy products, get a little cheese,
color, go to
yogurt,
color, red, green,
all the colored
purple,
fruits,
blue, everything that has
we
color.
all know
That's
this,
where all the nutrients
but it's
come from.
amazing how we. And if you turn on TV, there are 8 different cooking. Of course, there are good and bad cooking shows. Some of them are just entertainment, but there are some good cooking shows which continuously advise people. It's a choice. It's a healthy choice. It's not like anybody is going to come and reward you for eating healthy. You're rewarding yourself.
That's right.
It's a simple thing. You're an adult. You have to take responsibility for yourself and your families. Stop getting through those drive-through fast food joints, buying your kids all fast food. Once in a while, we all have to do it. But even in the fast food places, there are healthy choices.
Oh, yes. Grilled chicken sandwiches.
We have to start leading by example.
Right.
Well, you have to plan your meals. That's what I try to tell people too. If you don't plan them, and think about this. If I give you a bag of Lay's potato chips and you just happen to like potato chips, and it's the big ruffled bag, when do you stop in that bag? You know, you're going to stop, and your body's not going to, it's going to go like, I'm still hungry, man. I still want some more. I'm still craving that salt.
Good.
But if I give you 10 apples and say, okay, I need you to eat these 10. I mean, can you really consume 10 apples? I mean, usually 2. I mean, you know, a person
just
can
nature
eat
will
maybe
dictate what is right to do there.
That's right. So your Whole Foods, guys, it's really the ticket. And
we are coming up roughly about halftime here, and we have a very energetic, lively discussion about all this. Some of it is somewhat off the beaten path for us cardiologists who are talking most times about somewhat esoteric things, and a lot of the things we talk day to day on this show are the things that when people don't do this, or even if sometimes they do, unfortunately because of their genetic makeup, they may end up having all these diseases. That's what we see 90% of the time. But bulk of the show that we are dedicating today is talking about how before and after, even before you get all these problems, if you're relatively young, for those audiences that are watching, and those people, it is never too late. You can be 70 years old, you can be 80 years old, losing a few pounds, eating healthy, staying light is never a wrong thing to do. So it's I want to remind our audience again, this is a live call-in show. We'll take a few second break here and come back again to continue this discussion.
In the 21st century, Cardiovascular Institute of the South develops groundbreaking treatments to help eliminate amputation. Meet Philip. Philip experienced severe leg pain. CIS doctors diagnose an extreme case of PAD. CIS keeps Philip from joining the many people who lose limbs each year due to arterial blockage. Because of CIS's innovative procedures, nothing blocks Philip from spending time with his son or improving his golf score. This tradition and innovation continues in the following decade when CIS not only...
Who can you trust to use the latest technology to prevent stroke? Blockages in the carotid artery of the neck can stop the flow of blood to the brain, causing a stroke. Until